Hey, I'm Joel Wanasek with Unstoppable Recording Machine, and welcome to part 2 of EQing guitars. Today we're going to work on getting guitars to sit in a mix using EQ. The song is Coordinates, the band is August Burns Red. In the last video, we went over a lot of different types of EQ moves and how we could use them and talked about some of the potential trade-offs. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take our EQ and we're going to get these guitars to sound slamming in this mix. I've got a mix here. Let me just play it and have a listen. I'll mute all the guitars. All right, so you can clearly see we've got some heavy rhythm guitars, we've got clean guitars, we've got lead guitars, we've got some EBOs and some fun stuff like that. So let's dig in and work on getting a heavy rhythm guitar sound. So in the last video, we kind of left off here. We were playing around with some shelves and bells and stuff like that. So the first thing I usually like to do when I'm mixing guitars is to work on filtering, because again, there's a lot of headroom that we need to create in the mix. We're gonna do a high pass and a low pass, and let's see what it sounds like. So I'm just gonna do this a little bit quick. Let's have a listen to the bottom end. Try to get rid of that sub rumble. So let's hear it in context now. And I've got it around 100 hertz. That's my initial gut instinct. But again, we need to hear it in the track. So let's have a listen. Notice when I take the filter on and off, it gets really, really muddy in the bottom end, and the bass and the kick are really thick in this mix. We're definitely gonna have to add some space in the bottom end. So I'm just gonna play around with the filter here using a fine readjustment by holding the shift key in Cubase and the mouse wheel, which allows me to slide the filter very carefully back and forth and just listen to the bottom end and try to find the spot where I feel like it's gelling in the mix and everything kind of comes together really nicely and it gets tight. Notice a few things. As I'm down here in like the lower section, let's just say 50 to 80, I feel like it's too loose and too muddy. Somewhere between 100 to maybe 200 or a little bit before that, it sounds pretty good. As I start going higher up, it really starts disconnecting the guitars from the mix and they feel like they're floating in space. So let's kind of listen to that, cognizant of those things I've just described, and see how it affects the mix. So they start to lock right there. It's really starting to get disconnected. And it sounds totally weak. So let's play around in that 100 area and see what we can find, and find a spot where it kind of really locks nice. It's a little bit thicker and more cohesive and glued down here. When I go up to like 130, it gets just a little bit more separated and a little bit tighter. So let's have a listen. My ear, I like it around there. It's nice and glued and locked. It's not too overly thick, but it's definitely not floating. You know, it's a good balance of the two, in my opinion. Okay, so let's see if we can get some high frequency stuff out of here with a low pass and get some of the fizz. Give or take 1,000 hertz in either direction. It sounds like it definitely just cleans up a little bit of the fizz. It makes the cymbals a little bit nicer. compare before and after. Already starting to sound a lot more mix ready. So the first thing I want to do here, we were playing around with shelves a little bit earlier, so I at least have some kind of context, but I'm going to brighten these guitars up. Let's see what happens. The reason I want to brighten them up is because I'm listening to the attack on the kick and the snare and the cymbals, and everything is nice and clear in the vocals, and we definitely need a little bit more top end, but as I brighten them, they get harsh. So there's an EQing process that I like to use that's really powerful. It's called LDFC. It's called listen, diagnose, fix, and compare. So when I'm listening to the sound in context, for example, let's listen. Not only do I listen to the guitars, but I also listen to the sounds around it. So like, what does the top of the kick drum and the snare drum sound like? You know, what does the bass sound like? You know, so I'm hearing these guitars, they sound a little bit dark and they sound a little bit muffled. They need some stuff. So I'm diagnosing that. And I'm sitting there going, okay, we got to get some clarity in these guitars. They sound pretty good, but they need to be a little bit brighter and a little bit cleaner sounding, and definitely want to tighten up the bottom end so they lock into the mix a little bit. So now I'm going to fix them, and then we're going to compare the before and after. So that's the LDFC method. That's listen, diagnose, fix, and compare. I'm not going to shelf. When I was playing with the shelves earlier, I thought it was good, but I liked when we did that parametric cut to the bottom end. So let me solo this and see if I can find that muddy spot. And I just kind of swept around. Hear this? Somewhere in there, it's a little bit muddy and resonant. Hear it at 200. If I pull it back a little bit, it feels like it tightens it. So listen to it. If I go from 200 to like 160, somewhere in there, I'm trying to keep the bottom end intact, but I'm pulling it back here and trying to get it to be a little bit tighter and just more controlled while not, you know, because there's just a little bit too much floppy bottom end here. And when I move the EQ cut back, it feels like it just tightens up the guitars and it retains the integrity of the bottom. In the mix. That's a huge difference in definition in my opinion. So, all right, let's have a listen now. Let's try to get these guitars brighter. Like I said, when I crank up the treble, what happens is it gets a little bit harsh. Let's try maybe like a wide bell boost or something on the treble and see what happens. As I sweep, I can't really find anything that I like, so I'm going to just try to take a shelf, and let's see what happens. All right, as I bring up the shelf, I like how the guitar sounds. It's brighter, but the problem I'm struggling with is I'm hearing how the rest of the instruments are affected. Like the guitars are kind of bright and harsh, and I'm losing some clarity in the vocals and the cymbals. So there's some frequency in here that's really kind of harsh. So let's go in and let's try to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to just pull a point here and fish around. Relaxes my ears a lot more. Let me take a look at the mid-range here and see if there's anything we can pull out of it. definitely sounds a little honky in this range, and I'm playing around with like the 500 to 1K because it's a very different type of cut in the mid-range. And I'm just trying to get a little more clarity and focus in these guitars, so I've got some more mid-range for the body of the vocals. If I'm down here, it sounds a little bit more honky, but it's really controlled. If I come up here, I'm losing some of the tone a little bit, and it's but it's tighter, so it's interesting. To my ear, like the 1K sounds more balanced. So let's pull this out and maybe widen it up a little bit. To my ear, that makes the guitar sound infinitely tighter and better. Listen very carefully to what it sounds like before and after. I'll do the other cut too. I actually feel now like I overdid this cut. Now, this is a very important distinction here when you're EQing, because you can over EQ guitars and you can really mess up the phase. And you can give yourself a headache. So just as an example, let me dial this in and then I'll show you. Get it brighter and smooth, and it's not really working how I want, so I'm going to try to something more narrow. Playing with the EQ of the shelf here, moving it back and forward like a seesaw to kind of try to figure out the spot where I think it sounds best. Like opening up the air of the guitar versus some of the upper mids. All right, that sounds pretty good. I mean, it's definitely getting there. Let's open up another EQ. And I just want to show you what happens when you start over EQing. So a big thing when you're EQing is when you start chasing individual frequencies here, like I did at about 4K, you'll notice that sometimes you start hearing other ones. So let's solo these guitars and let's just go nuke a bunch of individual frequencies and just chase them. So I'm going to listen. That's annoying. Cut it, right? Cut another one. Let's see what else is annoying. That's annoying. Cut it. Oops. Let me... The right one. All right, let's go fishing again. You see, as you start removing frequencies, what happens is you start hearing new ones, and then you want to cut more things. And then you can chase your tail. So let's just keep EQing. That may or may not be better. In this case, it is, but I feel like I've overdone it a little bit. So sometimes you feel like you over EQ, but you like the points that you've cut, and you've kind of chased your tail around in circles going after frequencies. What you can do is you can take the cuts and you can just pull them back. So if the gain here is on 3, let's go back a dB. Let's go back maybe a little bit here on this one. Let's go a little bit back here on this one, maybe like, a third back. And let's see what happens now. See, it sounds kind of weird and kind of phasey to me. Like I liked it at first because my ears were used to it, but at the same time, I feel like I damaged the sound. So let's try something simple. This is a great trick for when you've come in and you've EQ'd things and you've overdone it and you're kind of used to how they sound. Sometimes just taking a wide cut and then trying to fix the problem you're hearing, right? One more. To me, overall, that sounds a lot better. It's definitely getting a lot tighter. Okay, so let's start with this rhythm guitar sound. And I generally, when I'm EQing, I try to mix as fast as possible. And I try not to go crazy because the more time you sit there spending with EQ, the more nuts you're going to drive yourself and you're going to lose perspective very quickly. So if I don't move on to a different part of the song, I'm not going to be objective anymore because I've already kind of blown my ears out on the EQ. So let's mute all the heavy duty stuff here on guitar and let's just listen to these two cleans and get these EQ'd. Some thick bottom in those, so let's do a low cut and see what happens. Not a huge difference, but it definitely creates a little bit of clarity and headroom. So what I'm listening for when I'm doing this and I'm trying to find the low cut position is how does it sound in context if I roll off a little bit too much bass on the cleans meaning we can hear more bass guitar, so there's more clarity, or when it's a little bit less and it sounds more gelled with the bass and more connected. That sounds nice and rich, but it gets a little bit muddy. A little bit too disconnected up there. That's pretty much where I like it. I think it sounds like it locks pretty good. Okay, so the other thing I'm hearing with this guitar, like I like how it sounds. I think it sounds nice. Something at the top end is bothering me. So we're using LDFC. I'm listening and I'm diagnosing that the top end to me sounds a little bit kind of, I don't know. It sounds a little bit harsh, but it still sounds like it needs to be a little bit brighter, or either that or the mid-range needs some work. So I'm not going to low pass this and pull out any of the sparkle because I think it's nice on these guitars. So let's try playing around with some bells and some shelves. That doesn't seem to be helping. I like that a lot. I heard something in the mid-range and I literally just went searching around with a point. Diagnosed there was a muddiness and I tried pulling it out. So that single cut really takes the guitars and now it makes it feel to my ears like they don't necessarily need to be any brighter. They sound nice and bright and chimey and they lock in really nice with the bass and it really kind of opens up the top end attack of the bass. Listen to this. Interesting about that is it's a cut at 400 hertz and the top of the bass to me sounds like it's around 800 to 2000, somewhere in there. Let's just call it 2K or, like 1000, somewhere in there. It's got a nice upper mid-range honk to it. But when I cut at 400, you can really hear it open up the top of the bass. And that's something that's really interesting. So have a listen to just the attack of the bass. It almost sounds like it gets clear. Okay, now there's something a little harsh in the top that I'm hearing that's bothering me, so I'm gonna go search for it. That's it, that's really annoying. Let's pull it out. Now I'm going to note when you're making surgical EQ cuts like this, it's important sometimes to play with the width of your cue because you don't want to necessarily always go for like whatever one you just default on. So let's try something really narrow. So when I go too wide, it's too subdued. When I go too narrow, it's too pokey. Right around there, it feels nice and smooth. It's easy on the ears. I'm just throwing a little bit of fader balance in here. Okay, so let's listen to this now with and without the EQ, because I don't think I'm going to add anything because this is kind of my initial gut feeling and I don't necessarily want to go crazy. The next video we're going to do, we're going to finalize these guitars and really kind of put them away. But right now I'm kind of just going off my gut feeling and just being like, okay, you know, this sounds pretty good. It may or may not need a little bit more depending on what else is in the track and, you know, how intense it sounds. But let's just stop there and proceed on. Start there. I'll add vocals a little bit later to this. Okay, now that we've had some perspective and we've not been really listening to our our heavy guitars for a while, let's go have a listen to those and see if we like them still. My ear immediately tells me that they're a little bit harsh up in like, I want to say like the 2K range. So now I've had perspective because I haven't been chasing so much EQ. I'm going to grab a point and I'm going to go try to soften these a little bit. Hear how much pressure that releases on the ear? Infinitely smoother, and the top of the kick comes through a lot more. Listen one more time. Just to do the opposite, I'm going to inverse it so you can hear it exaggerated. Heavy guitars are always one of those things, no matter how much you EQ them, you're always going to hear something wrong. So that's why, going back to what I was saying about your gut feeling when you're EQing, you should kind of try to EQ them with your initial impulse before your brain turns on and you start looking for problems, because you're going to keep finding them and keep finding them. Then you'll have destroyed your guitar tone and you want to just turn everything off and restart. It's a very dangerous cycle. Okay, so let's dial in the lead here. Let's get this first lead guitar. I wish I knew how to label things properly. Let's call this what it is. Okay, so let's hear it. A lot of conflicting frequencies in this guitar. First things first, let's get some kind of basic filtering in here. I'm just gonna steal the one I did in the last video. Watch the filter out of there. Let's get the harsh stuff out of the mids. I'm just trying to add some top because I want to see if I can get this to poke out a little bit more, because I know that the singing vocal range is usually between 2 to 4K, somewhere in there. So I'm sitting there like, okay, well, if I can't really boost in 2 to 4 because it's going to be conflicting, but maybe I can put something in like 6 to 8 and get some air. Maybe I can find some honk up here, which would compete with the bass, but it's already kind of honky sounding. So let's see if a top boost sounds good. Still a little bit of harshness in there. Let's pull it out. I'm diagnosing it, and I want to murder it ruthlessly. Pulling that whistle out of there. Let's see how it sounds now. And you'll notice the guitar gets a little bit less honky and harsh, and it opens up a little bit and more clear when I take the EQ off. Sorry, when I put the EQ on, not when I take it off. It sounds like crap when it's off, and it sounds much better when it's on. All right, that's great, because now we can actually hear the guitar, which is kind of important because it is a lead, and I'm sure the guitar player would appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at the clean leads and see what we got. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of unnecessary frequencies. Even though you can't hear them, it's still taking up headroom. So let's just drop this out to like 120, which just as a ballpark number. And there's a really nasty ring in this guitar that bothers me, so I'm going to try to find it. It's really hurting my ears. Still kind of harsh. Compensate for the top end of this that I cut that's kind of harsh. I tried to boost a little bit of air in there to see if it maybe kept the guitar just as bright. So it's kind of like a seesaw, you know what I mean? I brought it down too dark and then I want to add some. Let's see how it sounds in the track now and see if we need to adjust any of these adjustments. Definitely doesn't need the extra brightness. I hear some more harshness that I feel like needs to come out. And I moved this cut up because I was thinking like maybe I could get this a little bit warmer sounding and see how it sounds, because it's kind of just tough and it's very difficult in the top end here. This area is just kind of crushing my head. So pretty good, but I do want to clean up the mid-range. Like we can definitely go a little bit warmer, but we got to subdue the mid-range a little bit more. So let's bring in another EQ and let's see what we can do here. Cut at 324 really makes a big difference in the clarity of the guitar and how it sits in the track. Because again, now we're hearing that bass. Remember, we cut that out of the other guitar and it really helped. So let's do the same thing, right? That's sounding a lot better. Now we have these effects guitars up here. Let's take a look at these and see what we can do with them. Again, there's some definite piercing tension in there that I'm hearing. So I'm going to filter and cut out some of the ultra highs and stuff and see if we can just make this a nice ambient texture. So I'm kind of going around the same filters on the rhythms. It's really just there to kill headroom because, like I said, you can't necessarily hear it. You can see it on the grid. There's a little bit of stuff in there, but it's cleaning up the extreme ends. It's just trimming a little bit of the fat because all that headroom adds up across, you know, there's probably 80 plus tracks in this song. So if you have things happening down there, even if they're a little bit, they can really add up and muddy up your low end. So it's best just to get that stuff out of there. All right, so let's see. This is a little bit harsh and a little bit muddy. So let's see if we can accomplish both of those things and get rid of it. So first thing I'm going to do is go after the mud, and I'm going to go with a bell. A lot of mids there. You can see it on the analyzer, but never EQ with an analyzer. Always use your ears. While the analyzer is on right now on this plugin and I can see it, I'm never using it. I'm always just listening to the sound and I'm going, okay, I'm diagnosing what's wrong with it, so it's muddy, and I'm just moving around. Excuse me. I'm just moving around and trying to find the spot that sounds the best. So let's now go after the harsh stuff. We're going to try to keep this guitar a little bit warmer. Let's see how it sounds in the mix first. That actually worked out really nicely because I think it fits pretty well. It's just trimming it up a little bit, making it a little bit easier to listen to, and I can just kind of stack it and tuck it behind the clean leads. So, all right, now that we've had a chance to kind of get the EQ going for all the guitar tracks and getting them to sit in the mix and getting everything sounding a lot better, check your email because the next video coming at you is going to be polishing and fine-tuning all of the guitar tracks and really finishing this mix off in terms of the guitars. So please stick around and check that out. Thank you.